And we're back. I want to welcome to the show Michael Johnson, who contacted me out of the clear. I don't even, this is the first time I think we've ever met today.
Yeah, well, yeah, again, thank you so much for having me. I've been looking forward to this for a while. It's been, I think it was back in March we talked.
I know.
And now it's suddenly July. So
here we are.
thank you so much for having me.
Thanks for kicking off our 9th season. It seems hard to believe.
Yeah.
Mike, tell me, I did not ask you a lot of questions before the show, if you notice. I just talk kind of journal, because I want to kind of learn a little bit about you as we go along here. So, Mike, where are you from, and where were you raised in school and all that good stuff?
So I grew up in Lakewood, New York. That's still where I live today. I went to Southwestern High School down there. I learned to fly while I was in high school. My father is a pilot, just for fun, and so is my grandfather. So
you're a third generation.
I'm a third generation pilot. Yep. Wow. So I kind of grew up in the back of an airplane, kind of flying all over the place, going to a lot of breakfasts up here at Dart Airport. So that kind of sparked an interest for it. So I got my private pilot's license in high school, February of 2011. And then I went to Embry-Riddle Aeronautical University in Daytona Beach, Florida.
What'd you do there?
So I actually went for air traffic control, and I also did some flying while I was down there. I came home from school, and I just started focusing on the rest of my flying. I got my commercial, all my flight instructor ratings, and pretty much any rating that I could get, I got it.
Wow.
So, and then I started instructing up at the Jamestown Airport, and here I am.
Holy moly. So...
Lots to unpack there, I know.
That's a lot. Yeah, wow. So you can fly all right, let's start here. So what's the largest plane you can fly then?
Well, so I'm rated anything multi-engine land, so anything with more than one engine, I can fly. Now, you need a type rating for anything that's above 12,500 pounds. So, and I do not hold any type rating. So anything below 12,500 pounds, I can fly.
So what would be... Describe an airplane that's 12,499 pounds.
Well, actually, a Pilatus PC-12, they actually make it at that exact weight to avoid the type rating restriction. So it's a single-engine turboprop, about an eight-seater.
Okay, that gives me an idea.
The biggest plane I've flown was a Cessna 421 Golden Eagle. That's the biggest one that I've flown, but that's a twin engine, about an 8-seater as well. So.
Wow.
Yeah. So, actually, later today, I'm taking a Cessna P210 down to Nashville. So
you're going to Nashville.
That's in about an hour from now.
Why is this for
work? I'm picking up a client down there and bringing him back home. So
how long have you been doing this commercially? I mean,
So I've been a commercial pilot since 2017. So I've been working up at the Jameson Airport.
5 years.
So yeah.
Well, I did not know that when you walked in the door. So people say to me, well, how is it to interview people? I said, the most fun I have is when I don't know somebody. The hardest thing is when I know somebody is to come up with questions that I already know the answers to, but I don't want to ask it. So this is fun. All right, so you went to school in Lakewood.
Southwestern.
Southwestern,
okay. And then I went to college in Daytona Beach, but yeah.
Daytona. I didn't realize there was a school down there.
Yeah, so Embry-Riddle Aeronautical University is one of the biggest aviation colleges in the country.
Okay.
And it's really popular among pilots, and of course you have a lot better weather down there for training. This climate kind of is tough in the winter for flying. But
so, what's the farthest you've flown?
I've gone down to Florida a few times.
From here?
From here. That would probably be the farthest.
So how long does it take you to go from here?
Well, depending which plane you're going to use. If you're but probably between five.
Your choice.
Between 5. Well, I want to get there fast. I like speed. Probably between 5 and 8 hours. And just a few weeks ago, I was in Augusta, Georgia. It was about 3.5 hours in the plane I was flying.
So how fast do you go?
Well, again, depending on the plane. But the plane I'm flying, like today to Nashville, it cruises at around 190 knots.
So that's 190 miles an hour?
No, it'd be like 200 some miles an hour.
Ooh, I could like that.
Well, so you get places quick when you're going that fast in a straight line, so it's nice.
Yeah, people say I have a tendency to drive a little fast. Okay, so
Yep.
I got so many questions. I don't know where to begin.
we could do a whole show just on aviation. Then we'll talk about the books.
Then we'll talk about the books.
A whole separate show.
All right. So I know I know the answer to this, but you're going to tell me you know the answer to this, or you'll answer the way I think you're going to. Joe Minarovich.
Yes.
See, I knew it.
Yeah. So a lot of connections. I never got to meet him. My father has flown with him before. I think he did a flight review for him a while ago. But I'm on the board of the Lucille Wright Air Museum in Jamestown, and
Yep,
he was one of the founding members.
Yes, he was.
So I actually have a lot of his personal documents. I actually have a bunch of stuff in my car that I'm going through, just kind of sorting a lot of minutes from old meetings and stuff like that and trying to organize things. So the history thing kind of came a little bit later, but the flying was first.
Okay, so here's some background for your next book on that. Is Joe contacted me. I was the administrator at BOCES. Right. See, where was I at? At the Hughes Center. Okay. And Joe came into my office, basically unannounced. That was Joe. And he could talk a lot. So you said you never met him?
I never got a chance to meet him,
So just imagine somebody probably pushing 80 and just probably the highest energy level of a person that age I ever met in my life. Right. Joe was just a great guy. Well, anyways, he sat in my office and he wanted me to set up a program for aviation tech. In other words, people who work on airplanes and I can't even pretend to tell you everything he had in mind. And he wanted it to be a program that would be one of our tech programs. All right. So it took a long time, but we actually went down to the airport, located a site at the airport. I had somebody lined up to teach it, and we advertised it for a year. But unfortunately, we didn't have enough kids to run the program. But Joe and I became pretty good friends. So and here's my crazy story. So my wife said, "Do not go in the air with Joe. Do not fly," because she didn't want me anywhere near a little airplane. And I said, "Okay." So I said, so Joe says, "You want to go up?" I said, "I can't. My wife will kill me, or this plane will. One of the two." And so he says, "All right, we won't go up." So he had me out in I don't even know what it was. It was a very small plane, and he was teaching me to use the foot pedals to go
rudders,
right, whatever you call those. Rudders?
The rudder pedals.
Rudder, there you go. And I'm out on the tarmac and I'm having a great old time. So I actually drove an airplane on the ground.
Taxied.
That too. So anyways, so Joe I have fond memories of Joe. And it was really, really nice to have known him. So
he did a lot for this area.
And I had been down to the museum a couple of times, and so it was really, really, really cool. So it's sad that we've lost Joe, but okay. So let's get to why you're here today.
Yeah.
Mike, you've written 2 books, I see, and you told me you're working on a 3rd one.
Yes.
So let's start from the beginning, because I like to do that in the discussion. So what prompted you to write a book? I mean, this is not something that most people have the time or interest to do.
Yeah, well, I don't have the time to do it either, but I somehow found the time. But what happened was I became very interested in seen old pictures of the Jamestown Airport mainly, just the Jamestown Airport, and then some of the Baker Street Airport and Falconer Airport, and some of these little airports that were around in the 20s and 30s and stuff like that prior to the Jamestown Airport kind of being expanded.
Whoa. You said there were other airports besides Jamestown.
Oh, yeah.
Well, I had told you I know about Ripley, because that was like little tiny ones like dirt. Well, I don't know how it compared. I don't know.
Well, at the time, planes were small. I mean, there wasn't necessarily commercial service. There wasn't. Jamestown was the only one with commercial service. But these were small airports where people had their personal aircraft, or either a Waco.
Okay,
or
so this was almost unregulated in some regards, I guess.
Yeah, well, it still kind of is to this day. I mean, people make their own little airports at their houses all the time.
Really?
There's very little federal regulations on that. It's kind of freeing, actually. Not a lot of people know about that either.
They do now.
There's tons of it's kind of a secret.
You heard it second.
But there's tons of little airports around, and at the time they were popping up left and right.
Well, yeah, because it was so new.
It was so new. There was one off of Fluvanna, kind of near where Bender's Pancake House is. I don't know if you ever heard of that place, kind of off of Fluvanna Avenue. There was the Baker Street Airport, which a lot of people know. There is a plaque there in Bergman Park. That was actually the first airport inside the Jamestown city limits.
Really?
Was the Baker Street Airport. There also was the Falconer Airport, about where the football field is now.
Okay, right by the school.
Yep, right there. And actually, you would take off. You have to dodge the school. I have a photo of it. It was quite the approach. Or you had to dodge the hill where 86 is
That's
now.
right.
So either side, you kind of had an obstacle that you had to dodge. And then there were a handful of other small little airports, but those were kind of the main ones.
And that's just in the Jamestown area.
That was just in the Jamestown area. Then you go into Dunkirk, and we can talk about Worley. There's like we only have 25 minutes left. So I got to be careful. But so there's quite a few of these small little airports, and so I kind of became obsessed with it, and I started collecting all these photos, and I realized no one really had a book or articles or a collection of these photos, and I got to a point where I started to have probably the biggest collection of local aviation history, and I thought, okay, I need to find a way to share this. So I thought about writing some newspaper articles for the Post-Journal, which I did some. And I'm like, you know what? I got so much information. This could be a book. Like there was just so much in there. And then I'm also on the board of the Fenton History Center. So of course, I go through there a lot and I see all their books. I'm thinking, you know what? I should do it. I should write a book. And I've never written a book before. I don't consider myself a writer, but now I have 2 books and a third on the way. So and then the Jamestown book came to be. So that's kind of the story of the Jamestown book. But
all right. So let's delve a little bit in there.
Yeah.
So the Jamestown book. If somebody were to have this, what would they see in there?
So the Jamestown book, it has lots of photos, and I try to give a timeline from basically from when aviation started,
which was
in 1903 when the Wright brothers had their first flight.
Which really isn't all that long.
It really wasn't all long ago for fixed wing travel. I mean, I do mention in there about technically the first flights in the county were balloon ascensions in Celeron Park. Those were the first time that someone in the county took flight. And in 1911, the VinFizz, which was the first cross country travel of an aircraft from New Jersey to California.
Say that word again.
It's called the VinFizz.
VinFizz.
Right, so VinFizz was a type of, it was a grape soda basically, and they sponsored Perry Rogers to fly his plane from New Jersey to California. And he did it. It took him months, but he got it done. Unfortunately, he was killed a few weeks after he finished it in another aviation stunt that he was trying. But he was the first person to go from coast to coast in an aircraft. And actually, he flew right over Chautauqua County, flew right over Lakewood. He dropped a note to a local businessman in Jamestown, but I forget the name of the businessman, but it's a very interesting story, and there's a really good book about it from the Smithsonian that talks about the VinFizz, and it even has a whole section of when he flew over Jamestown in it.
Oh my gosh. Yeah. All right, so what year would you say the first airport was in Chautauqua County? Let's start there.
That is a debatable question.
Well, just pick a date. I mean, era. What?
Right.
What?
So the first airport actually was Chautauqua Lake, because the first airplane to ever land in Chautauqua County was the Bumblebee, which was owned by Al Engel out of Cleveland. And Celeron Park brought him in, and he was giving rides on Chautauqua Lake.
What year was that?
That was 1914 in the summer. So they brought him in all summer, and he flew airmail around, and he gave passenger rides. And it was, it's a little, had one little ski on it, and he'd come in and land on the water. People, they'd charge for rides and stuff like that. But it was just something to get people to the park. That's kind of what was just to build notoriety for Celeron Park. So that was 1914, and then the Baker Street Airport was probably the first one. That's what I believe was the first one, although some people at the Fenton will disagree with me on that. But and that was opened in 1923. So I'm going to say it's probably around 1923 was the first airport.
Just about 100 years.
Just about 100 years, yep.
Oh.
And actually, the Jamestown Airport is having its 90th anniversary this coming August. So
it's funny you said about the guy landing on the lake. Air flight's okay, because I've flown to various places over the years, Europe and so on. But one of the memorable air flights I had was up in the I'm trying to think exactly where you would call it, Sagamore. So wherever the Sagamore is, up in the Adirondacks, I guess. And we were. This guy says, "You guys want to take an airplane ride? I'll pay for it," or something like that. I think it was 4 of us, and it's a long story, but anyways. So I said, well, I have to sit in the front because otherwise I'll get plane sick or car sick, because I have to be in the front. And I get motion sickness, so I took my Dramamine, I think. And so I had a camera with me, like a video camera or whatever. And we got up there, and it was absolutely, unbelievably gorgeous. Because you know how you do these little scenes at Christmas where you put a little lake and people with little houses or whatever. Well, and that's what it looked like. It didn't even look real, because the lakes were so calm, these little lakes up there. And then he said, "We're going to land now." And I go, "This is a pontoon." I'd never been on a plane with pontoons on there. It was the coolest experience. It was like a big cushion. It was, whoosh.
Yep.
I could do that all the time.
Right. Oh, it's addicting. I was just doing it last weekend actually on Chautauqua Lake. It was a lot of fun.
Oh wow. So that's cool. I suspect being a pilot probably is something you really, really get into after a while.
You do. I joke with a lot of my students. It becomes a bit of an addiction, unfortunately. In some ways, it's unfortunate that it's so expensive, because once you get doing it, you don't want to stop, and you always want to get better. It's something that you never necessarily perfect. You're always working on it. You're always trying to get better. A lot like golf or other skills in that sense, where there's always something to improve upon. I've never met anyone that would consider themselves a great pilot. They're always working to be better.
What do you have to do to be a great pilot?
It's just because there's always something. Do everything perfectly. Land just perfectly, just smooth as possible. There's always something you can do better.
Okay.
And I think that's kind of part of the allure of it for me was just the challenge of it, because there's always something you can work on. It's not like something you can master and then be done with it. There's always other considerations.
So we're talking history here. So
Yeah.
let me jump into your family history. So why did your grandfather become a pilot? Was it because he was in the service or something?
He was in the service, but he did not fly in the service. His name was Stanley Johnson. He lived in Lakewood. He got it through a friend named Joe Fairbank, who owned Fairbank Farms.
Oh yeah.
So that's how he got into aviation was through him, and then he had a Piper Super Cub, but he had a few other planes before that. And then of course that's how my father got into it, and then me. So
do you guys have your own plane?
yeah, my father has a Piper Super Cub, so actually the same one that my grandfather bought from the factory. So
So where do you keep it, down to the airport?
so actually no, we have a little small little grass strip at the house. So
You have your own
small
airport
grass
at your
strip,
own. This is way cool. So only because I want to know this, how big of a place do you have? How big of a strip do you need?
Well, for a Super Cub, honestly, not much. You can take off and land within 1,000 feet.
That's a quarter of a mile.
So
1,000 I mean, just about a quarter of a
yeah,
mile.
so our strip's about 1,800 feet, but it's now not too much compared to the airport where we have over a mile of runway. But most of the planes that we teach people to fly in, that would not be enough room just to be able to stop and take off and all that. So realistically, most runways are probably in the 3,000, 3,500 range. Is that's kind of a normal.
Right, and a big pillow at the end, right?
or the arrestor cables, like from Top Gun, yeah.
Well, I got another story to share with you, and then I want to really get deep into your books. So, have you done much glider stuff?
Only once at Dart.
I did it in Germany.
Oh wow, that's really cool. I'd like to do that, yeah.
Woo! So my friends in Germany, we might as well say family now. It's a long story, but we've had an extended family there through. We had an exchange daughter years ago, and my friend Rudolph says, "I'm going to take you someplace special." I go, "Okay," and I never know where he's going to take me. So we go out, and there's this big field, and he says, "We have gliders here," and I'm watching. I go, "Well, that's cool," and so they have the cable on the end of the glider, and this contraption is like a quarter of a mile away, and they have these walkie-talkies, okay, or whatever they say, and all of a sudden the cable starts pulling that plane and up it goes. So I said, well, this is cool, and I'm watching this, I'm enjoying it. He says, would you like to go in? I go, what? I go, oh my God, I've never, and I remember I told you I got motion sickness. So I said, all right, so they give me this backpack, and I'm going, like, what's this for? He said, well, it's your parachute. I go, why do I need a parachute? And so luckily I knew the pilot, and so we got in this thing. Well, I'm 6'2", and the glass dome must be like 6'2.5". I think I swear my head was like right touching the glass. It was like 120 degrees in there because it was a sunny day. So up we went, and he says to me, now, if you get uncomfortable, let me know. I said, I'm uncomfortable, because all of a sudden we had a vortex or something come up, a heat thing, and it starts like moving us around up there somehow that wasn't anticipated on my part. And so we landed fine, but it was interesting. But that was really tight in there, and I kept thinking about this parachute. My luck had probably been all in German instructions, So, but
yeah, gliders are pretty cool. There's a really actually famous scene from the Thomas Crown Affair with Steve McQueen where he's flying the glider around.
Okay.
It's one of my favorite movies. So I've always loved that scene. But
okay, so book one.
Yes, Jamestown.
All right. So if somebody wanted that book, how do they get it? Let's start there.
Yeah, so it's available online if you're watching from somewhere else. It's also available at the Fenton History Center, at the Lucille Wright Air Museum, and at Berjota's.
So online being Amazon? Or?
It's on Amazon and on eBay. So.
Oh, okay. And eBay as
Or
well.
you can always email me directly to flychautauqua@gmail.com, and I can coordinate.
Whoa, slow down. You said that way too fast.
Flychautauqua@gmail.com.
All one word?
Yes, all one word, yep.
Okay, flychautauqua.com? Okay.
Flychautauqua@gmail.com.
Oh, at Gmail.
Yeah, Gmail.
Gmail.com.
Yeah.
All right, so flychautauqua@gmail.com. Got it. All right, Mike. So then book two.
Yes.
Why do we have book two?
So obviously researching this book, I got so much information on Jamestown, and then the Dunkirk Airport is the other county airport, and in some ways it kind of became a redheaded stepchild to the Jameson Airport, because Jameson Airport always got all the biggest advances, and actually until recently, where actually the Dunkirk Airport now is longer than the Jameson Airport, but because it got an expansion about five years ago. But so I started I kind of got through all the Jamestown history. I kind of collected all that, and the family that I worked for, the Elbow family, they come from the North County, and they are very instrumental in the history of the Dunkirk Airport and the Worley Airport previous to that. So they're the ones that kind of really pushed me to start researching the Dunkirk book. And at first I wasn't too interested just because I just finished this book and I didn't have the time, and I didn't want to dig into another book. They started giving me lots of photos, and I started working with the Dunkirk Historical Society up there, and they really helped me out, and I was able to write a very interesting story, I think. So and I try to go from the early days all the way to present. I try to keep a timeline throughout the book. So.
Okay. Now, so what's your process for writing? I like to ask this of authors because everybody's a little different. I mean, is this something that you just sit down and do all in one session, or that you've been just, how do you do it? So
how it comes with the books is first I have to collect everything, obviously all the research, all the photos, because if I'm not inspired to do it, I can't do it. So I need to see the photos really are what gets me going through it. So I'm very visual in that sense. So what I'll do is I'll kind of get all the photos together, and then I create just a basic outline on my phone. I'll do it on my notes app. I'll just go, okay, here's kind of the sections I want. Here's kind of a basic rundown timeline of it all. And then from there, actually, I do it all in one giant session. So the Jamestown book I wrote over the course of Thanksgiving week back in 2019. In 2019, yeah, and I just wrote it all over because I had some time off, so I just wrote it all throughout that whole week. I wrote the whole thing,
right.
And then obviously I had to do some editing and move some things around. But the main bulk of it I wrote then. And the Dunkirk book was the same thing. I wrote the bulk of it during. It was just I had like 3 or 4 days where I wasn't doing anything, and the weather was bad, so I wasn't flying. So I just sat down and I just got it all done. It was some long days, but it did it. But I have to do it that way because if I try to piecemeal, I won't get it done.
So when people are writing fiction, they can say anything you want, make up anything they want. But when you write factual stuff, you're putting yourself on the line.
It's tough. It's tough, and sometimes it's a lot of calls to Norm Carlson at the Fenton because he helps me a lot and keeps me straight on facts. There are some facts that we have to take some liberties with, and I do make that clear in the book. I'm like, I'm not 100% sure if this is correct.
Approximate.
It makes sense. It would be, and I try not to put too many rumors in there about different things, but. Occasionally, if it's an amusing one, I might put it in there, but I try to clearly label it. But yeah, obviously dates are really big. So if I can really verify the dates, and so I spent a lot of time in the Prendergast library going through old microfilm to be able to do that. I'm probably the youngest person that knows how to use a microfiche machine. So.
I won't go there. I've actually used them. Yeah, they're kind of cool. And unfortunately, a lot of that's the only way you can get some of the information is microfiched. All right, so book 3.
Yes.
How about, don't give it all away, but...
Oh, well, I can give you the premise. So in writing my Jamestown book, mainly, I got in contact with Jeff Hall. And Jeff's parents used to own and operate Chautauqua Airlines out of the Jameson Airport.
Oh, all right.
So he lives out in New Hampshire right now. And so a few months ago, Gavin Swanson and I, a friend of mine, flew out to New Hampshire to meet him, and he gave us a bunch of stuff to put in the museum from Chautauqua Airlines. And we've stayed in touch. He lives out kind of in northern New Hampshire. So we've been staying in touch, and he's been sending me a bunch of stuff, and we've been talking about kind of doing a joint book together on the history of Chautauqua Airlines. Because Chautauqua Airlines, they've since been sold to another company, but they still exist in a way as Republic Airlines out of Indianapolis.
Okay.
And they still operate many flights for Delta, United, and American. So they're a very big airline, and so many pilots have worked at Chautauqua. So they're a very well-known name in the aviation, in the airline business especially. So. That's kind of what I wanted to kind of put together a history of Chautauqua Airlines, but just because it's such a fascinating story, because they were one of the first airlines to start the code sharing, which is, they were operating flights for Allegheny Airlines.
Right.
But they were not Allegheny Airlines, but it said Allegheny on the plane.
Yeah.
Just like when you get on a Delta flight today, it's not necessarily operated by Delta, or it's not necessarily operated by American.
It could be Lufthansa, it could be whatever, yeah.
Right, or these smaller airlines like Piedmont or Envoy or Republic, or which used to be Chautauqua. So I find that story really fascinating, and actually that's kind of going to be a big premise of the book, is the initial deal between Allegheny and Chautauqua, and Allegheny and Suburban Airlines, all these small little commuter airlines that started to pop up after deregulation.
Okay.
So that's kind of going to be a huge part of it, and then just all kinds of photos. I have so many photos of so many people that have gone through and his mom kept a newsletter every 2 weeks for that she would staple with the paychecks.
Wow.
And I have every single one of them. So that for me is awesome because now I have dates, I have names, I have everything. So that's going to be huge for me. So I'm really looking forward to going through all that. So that's we're in the kind of early phases where we're collecting a lot of stuff right now, but I hope to have that done here by the end of the year.
Great. When you were talking about early years before the airplanes were there, were the balloonists.
Yeah.
And I told you earlier, and folks know this, that I'm the town historian in Ripley.
Yeah.
And there's actually a story, and I don't remember the year, but it was early 1900s probably, where there's a story that was carried on through the local newspapers there. It might have been the Westfield Republican, I can't remember, of a balloonist. They went up. Well, he came down, but not the right way. And it was like the story of the year, and it was a Frenchman, I think, or something like that. But anyways, if I find it, I'll send it to you just for your own archives.
Yeah, I love to. Again, I love collecting all kinds of old stuff on different things, and that's actually something I put my emails in all these books, and I tell it whenever I do an interview, whether it's with you or with WJTN or whatever. And once in a while, I'll get someone that emails me out of the blue, and they have photos or they have something they want to share with me.
That's the beauty. People do want to have share information, and a lot of people, I think, are into history more than we realize. Or there's that old cigar box or hat box. They got pictures under the bed or up in the attic. So that's great that they would share that. So real quick, who should read this?
Pretty much anyone that's interested in anything aviation, and if you like local history, or honestly either or. I've actually sent some of these books out all around the country to people that have that have necessarily no connection to the local area. They just want some of the aviation history. And a big part of that actually comes from the Jamestown book, where I have a very detailed write-up and some unique photos of the TDR-1. Now, the TDR-1 was the drone that was built at the Jameson Airport during World War II. It was a top secret Navy project.
I didn't know that.
Yeah. So not a lot of people do it. It's a really great story. Honestly, I could do a book just on that, and I might at some point once I get done with the Chautauqua Airlines one. But I have some very unique photos. Actually, I have the only photo I know of where I have multiple ones up at Jamestown, up on the ramp, because they were constructing them. So that's kind of been, I think, a big part for the Jamestown book that's really kind of gotten out there, is just kind of my research on the TDR-1.
Okay.
So.
And before we get to, you have some pictures, and we have time for those yet. Who's Lucille Wright?
So Lucille Wright came to the area in what was probably the 50s. She was married to John H. Wright, who was the owner of Jamestown Telephone Company. And she got on the airport commission. She became the head of the airport commission, and she became, quote unquote, the airport manager. It was the city. The airport was owned by the city at the time.
Okay.
So the airport commissioner was basically the airport manager. So she ran the airport for over a decade, and she was very instrumental in getting the 58 expansion to happen. So a fact that I think a lot of people are shocked to hear about: the Jamestown Airport has not been expanded since 1958.
It is what it is.
It's been repaved. It's been, actually right now they're doing a repaving. But the actual runway lengths have stayed exactly the same since 1958, which really it's a shame, because if we got another 1,000 feet, we could get a lot more jets into there. But so she was instrumental in making that happen. She really had a vision for that airport. And while she was there, Allegheny was there, Mohawk was there. So she really fought to try to make it a very big commercial airport. So she did a lot for aviation in this area, but she also did a lot for aviation just in general. She was friends with Amelia Earhart. She was part of the 99s, which is a women's pilot club and stuff like that. So she was a very successful pilot in her own right. Well, at a time where women were not in aviation.
Wow.
And it's starting to change. I've had about 4 female students, which is pretty good. So
more and more.
Exactly.
All right. So I know you got some pictures here, and I'm anxious to see them with you, because I heard you talking about them with Jeff before the show, and I didn't actually look at them. So Jeff, when you pop them up, and Mike will narrate.
Yeah.
So what are we looking at here?
So this is the Baker Street Airport, and that is a Martin aircraft. It's actually, they call it the Flying Greenhouse. I believe it's the designator is MB-1.
Why does it look dangerous to me? I don't know. It doesn't. It looks like, I don't know.
They call it the Flying Greenhouse because you can see the top part. Actually, it's all glass, so it's like a greenhouse up. That's why they call it the Flying Greenhouse. So it was twin-engine planes. You can see the huge group of people that came out to see this. As for why it was there, I don't really know, but
circa 19.
Oh, this would be 20s.
Okay.
This is probably mid 20s, and it stopped in there, and they used those for bombers. The Army did
during World War
One.
Okay.
Yeah. So it was probably a World War I circa, may have been right after, to be honest with you, but. But yeah, that's just a really cool photo to see that. That's probably the biggest plane that landed at the Baker Street Airport.
Mackerel, that's huge.
Yeah.
Okay.
And the Baker Street Airport was just a field. I mean, it wasn't paved. It was just a giant grass field they landed on, it wasn't smooth.
There was no restaurant or bathrooms.
Nope. You're dodging trees.
Okay.
And you hope someone mowed it.
Oh my gosh, what's this one?
So this is a photo of one of those people. I believe is Nimus Almgren, but that's a group of people, and they're actually on Chautauqua Lake in the winter. And you can see that the aircraft has skis on it. And I believe someone told me the location of this, and it was down in Lakewood, probably around near the Rod and Gun area, is approximately where this photo was taken. But you can kind of tell that they're on the lake, but they're on the skis.
Do airplanes still have skis on them?
Yep. A lot of people will do that around here in the winter. They'll take the wheels off, put skis on.
Looking at this picture, and this is for those that are listening on the radio right now, it's open. I mean, you're flying in the wintertime
they're
open?
Cold. Yeah, they were really cold that day.
I'm assuming there's no heaters in those, or?
Well, there probably is a heater, but it would probably just blow on your feet, and honestly, I don't think it would do too much. So how heat works on an airplane, it just takes it off it's a shroud around the exhaust, and then just blows it into the cabin.
So that's a single prop?
Single prop, yeah. It's a Curtis Robin, I believe, or it might be a Waco. Honestly, it's kind of tough to tell, but
you can make it up because I wouldn't have any difference. Okay, this is go
through photos.
So it's an aerial view of something.
Yeah, well, can you guess where that was? We talked about it earlier.
Faulkner.
Yes, it is. That's the Faulkner. That's the Faulkner.
I had to look at the school building.
Yeah. So that's just as we were talking about that earlier. There's the Falconer Airport. So it was just a field, and you'd have to kind of dodge the school or dodge the hill, dodge the berm there on the other side.
So people listening again, it would be behind the school to the right.
Yeah, basically where the football field is. That's pretty much where the Falconer Airport was.
So I see the school building, and then there's a road behind it, and now you
can see a few planes
there, and then obviously it looks like maybe a little hut or something.
Yeah, well, honestly, it looks like there's something going on there because there's like a tent set up. So I'm wondering if there's like an air show, or I wonder if there's some event going on there because that tent does not look like a permanent structure. So
wow, and this is a picture from an airplane. No airplanes
from an airplane. Yeah.
Oh my gosh.
Probably the 50s.
Okay, great. Let's see another one, Jeff. These are fun.
Oh, isn't this great?
Oh my God! So, now this got to be the Army Air Force.
So the Dunkirk Airport was built as an Army airfield as part of the Niagara Frontier Defense Initiative. So these were a bunch of people that are in front of a B-25. I wish I could get their names, and they were heading off to war, and they made a stop in Dunkirk.
You know, and a lot of people don't know this, and I don't know what age we're cuts off. But the Army and the Air Force were all one.
Yes, they were.
My dad was in the Army Air Force, and he was a radio operator. And hang on. Okay, till 19. Okay, Jeff was in the Air Force. So in October of '47, they split off after the war. But it was all one unit. So those guys obviously were part of all that.
Army, yep.
Wow. Okay. You got another picture?
Here's a more recent photo of Dunkirk Airport. This is probably 70s. At the time, the Nullbones were running it there. They had a Cessna dealership there. That's why
is that somebody's house next to it?
So there's a whole story about that house. So that house was originally by the Worley Airport. It was moved over to the Dunkirk Airport, and it is still there today. It's been kind of modified into an office building.
Oh, okay.
But the main structure of it is actually still used today. And you can read about that in the Dunkirk book.
All right.
Let's see. Let's check out another one here. So here's a great photo of the Worley Flight School. I colorized this. So John Nellbone, when he got out of the Army, he was a flight instructor in the Army down in Arcadia, Florida, flying Stearmans. After he came back to the area and he started a flight school at the Worley Airport up in Dunkirk, and this was his flight school that he started. So.
Oh, I know those are just little bitty. I think
right
that was the size of plane I was taxiing.
So there's a cub there, and there's a cub and a champ. Yeah.
Okay, we got any more?
Yeah, I think there's a few more. So this is actually the cover on the Jamestown book. So here's a photo of the old Jamestown terminal building.
Oh, wow.
Really, I really wish if anyone out there has photos of the interior of that structure, of the interior of that building, please send them to me because I've been trying to track those down for a while. So.
Okay.
Now here's part of the 57 expansion, and there was a third runway that you can kind of see that goes north to south there. That's being removed at the time. But
another aerial view.
Yep, and a lot of these I colorized myself just to give it a little more pop.
Yeah.
So the colors might be slightly off, but
okay.
I think we have maybe one or two more, but
all right. That's it.
Oh, that's it. Okay. Well,
we're just about out of time.
I know we're running out of time.
Mike Johnson, you're an aviator, pilot, you're a writer, a historian. You're like all rolled into one. How do people get hold of these books again?
So at the Fenton History Center, the Lucille Wright Air Museum, Berjota's, or you can email me directly at flychautauqua@gmail.com.
And what do these books cost?
They're $20 a piece.
Okay, and that's pretty much the going rate.
That's the local history book going rate.
Right, and that's a lot of time and work in
Yeah,
there.
okay. I'm not making any money on this, believe me.
10 cents an hour. Well, Mike, thanks for contacting me and coming on the show. As you know, I love history, and folks, anybody really knows anything about aviation in the area or any good stories, send them to Mike, and maybe you'll get in his next book.
Yeah, exactly.
All right. That's
Thank
a
you
wrap.
so much.
So a good,
Appreciate it.
safe landing, didn't we? Yeah. Okay. So we're going to do this on next week, but in between, we're going to be in Mayville at the library outside, and we're going to do the Mayville Independence Day 4th of July parade. So stop by and say hi. Otherwise, we'll see you next week. Take care, everybody. Be safe. Yep.